The envelope trembled in Ray Mercer's hands, and the paper inside felt colder than the rain pressing the window. He said, "If this is real, I get to breathe like a living man." The letter named him cleared, but the stain still echoed. Reputation was the price and the prize. He traced a coffee ring that had lived on the table longer than his courage. Mira Bennett said, "Read it out loud so I can believe with you." He read each line like a step on thin ice. The words freed his name, not his habits, not the eyes that watched. He said, "If I fail this time, I lose my daughter and the right to show up." The key he once kept to a job that fired him lay on the counter like a dare. He dialed Gloria Ruiz, the sponsor who never sweetened the truth. Gloria Ruiz said, "Clean is not a feeling. It is a ledger you balance daily." He pictured Tyler Knox shaking a judge's hand someday. The rival was fast, charming, and just crooked enough to win. He said, "I will not bend." The room felt smaller for that promise. The letter ended with one sentence that cut the fog. He said, "No excuses left." The debt woke up. Morning came in the color of dishwater, and the letter sat like a witness no one could bribe. Ray Mercer said, "Today I book the meeting, then the test, then whatever they throw." His heart counted the stakes like debts do. Freedom from the story was not freedom from the work. He wiped the table, as if clearing crumbs could clear memory. Mira Bennett said, "I'm with you, but proof likes calendars, not speeches." He nodded and packed the old key away, a relic that cut his pocket. He said, "If I miss one step, Dana Patel signs no badge and Ava sees me stumble again." He washed the mug until the glaze squeaked and laughed once at himself. Gloria Ruiz texted, "Be boring and on time." He said, "Boring saves lives." Bills waited in a row like quiet threats. The bus schedule on his phone showed gaps like traps. He counted buffers and swore off shortcuts. The apartment door stuck, then gave, as if warning him to push steady. He said, "I will earn the right to be seen, not forgiven for free." The day watched. The clinic lobby hummed with fluorescent fatigue, and a clock that clicked louder than nerves. Ray Mercer said, "I'm here for the screening and the work slot list." The receptionist glanced at the letter, then his face, then the letter again. Suspicion traveled faster than mail. He steadied his breath and owned the past without inviting it to sit. Gloria Ruiz said on the phone, "Answer what they ask, not what shame rehearsed." He nodded and measured each word. A man in a navy suit, Tyler Knox, crossed the lobby with a smile that never found his eyes. Tyler Knox said, "Heard you're back in the game." Ray said, "I'm back to do the work." The file folder felt heavy as wet cloth. The stake was dignity that could be proven by punctuality and quiet days. A poster promised second chances in fonts too cheerful. He chose the hard seat far from the door, so leaving would be a decision. He said, "If it costs me applause, I can live with that." The call with Dana Patel arrived like a court date disguised as a calendar invite. Dana Patel said, "We follow policy, Mr. Mercer, not sentiment." He said, "I'm offering pattern, not pity." She asked for logs, tests, and references that had to outlast rumors. The clock measured her patience in careful beats. He pictured Ava's science fair ribbon and the empty frame on his wall. He said, "You will have receipts." Dana Patel said, "Then we will have time." The difference between gate and door was paperwork and weeks of showing up. He felt the pull of Tyler Knox, shortcut stories like a current underfoot. Gloria Ruiz texted, "Pride is loud, integrity is routine." He said, "Routine it is." The letter lay on the desk, no longer glowing, just paper that demanded follow-up. He wrote a list that started with humility and ended with bedtime. He said, "I will not be interesting." Boring would be the drum that walked him home. Night pressed its ear to the apartment and waited for excuses. Ray Mercer said, "Here's the promise." He read it to the room like a contract. He would show up early, tell the truth when it stung, and walk away from easy wins, that rotted later. Mira Bennett said, "Then I will hold the line with you." He placed the old key in a small box and shut it. The prize was a clean ledger and a seat at Ava's next game with outside eyes. The price was every shortcut refused and every late night endured. He felt the rival's shadows stretching toward the same prize with lighter feet. He said, "He can have the applause." The table was cleared of rings and crumbs, but not history. He taped the exoneration letter inside a cabinet, private but reachable. He said, "I want the right to show up again." The building's heat clicked on like a slow heart. He breathed with it and set his alarm. The time clock at Portside Fabrication blinked late again, and the foreman's eyes said policy before his mouth did. Ray Mercer said, "Bus stalled on 3rd, but I can make up the minutes." The foreman pointed to the sign that married seconds to trust. Bills in Ray's pocket rustled like a jury. He signed the temp log and swallowed the sting. Mira Bennett said, "Text me the out time, I'll line up dinner." He nodded because reliability is a bridge you build from both ends. The grinder screamed, and his thoughts settled into sparks and steel. Tyler Knox walked past the fence, waving at management like a neighbor who owned the block. Tyler Knox said, "Hope the commute treats you kinder tomorrow." Ray said, "I treat the commute kinder." Sweat climbed his back like a warning flare. He pictured Dana Patel's calendar and the slots that vanish if you blink. Gloria Ruiz texted, "Protect the boring." He checked the clock and tightened the guard on the blade. He said, "No shortcuts, no stories, only minutes." The day kept its receipts. The bus wheezed to a halt, 2 blocks short, and the driver shrugged at fate like a co-worker off shift. Ray Mercer said, "I'll run it." His boots slapped puddles, and cold air bit his chest. He reached the clinic door as the minute flipped to closed. The receptionist raised a hand like a crosswalk. She said, "Next window is Friday." He counted what Friday would cost and kept his voice low. "Please log that I showed," he said. Her stamp landed with Mercy's smaller cousin. Outside, the city honked at no one in particular. He dialed Dana Patel and left a message that did not apologize, only accounted. "I will be early next time," he said. Tyler Knox posted a photo from a panel downtown, captioned with brightness. Mira Bennett said, "I saw the stamp. Eat, then plan." He ate the plan first and penciled buffers like sandbags. He said, "I will move before friction wakes." The sky pressed down, but the list stood up. Friday came dressed as a test. Ray Mercer arrived 40 minutes early and sat where leaving would itch. He said, "Count me present." The nurse called his name like a door that opens once. He answered straight because curves invite doubt. Gloria Ruiz said, "You are not proving innocence. You are practicing honesty." He breathed into the cup of routine. The results posted clean, and the desk printed a date that unlocked the next date. Progress felt like climbing a staircase with shallow steps. Outside, his phone buzzed with a missed shift dock. He said, "Pay it forward." The loss hurt, but it hurt the right ledger. Tyler Knox texted a winking offer to cover work through someone's cousin. Ray typed, "No thanks." He deleted the joke that would have made it easy. He walked to the bus with a paper that weighed more than it looked. He said, "Cost is part of clean." The wind agreed without applause. Gloria Ruiz met him at the community center where walls smelled like bleach and perseverance. Gloria Ruiz said, "I will vouch if you log every day and call before bad news calls me." He said, "Yes." She slid a binder across like a baton that refuses to be dropped. "Food, sleep, work, amends," she said, "and the hard one, silence." He bristled and then let the bristle pass. Mira Bennett said, "I will manage the quiet if you manage the truth." He nodded and wrote his name on the first blank box. Gloria pointed at a chair near the door. "Sit here when pride itches," she said. He sat and felt the door behind him like an alarm he would not trigger. The clock over the basketball hoop ticked like a soft metronome. He said, Humility tastes like cardboard, but it fills. Gloria smiled once and put away the smile. Return it full, she said. He carried the binder like work, not hope. Contradiction arrived on a thin sheet from an old audit, slid under his door with no return name. Ray Mercer said, "Why send this now?" The totals that once buried him did not match the freight logs. A note circled a signature that wasn't his. He felt anger rise like fast heat, then set it down. Dana Patel said on the phone, "We review facts, not feelings. Bring copies and patience." He said, "I will bring both." Tyler Knox messaged, "Some paperwork gets messy, don't drown in it." The charm read like bleach on a stain. Mira Bennett said, "This could help or hurt, so hold the line." He made a folder labeled withheld until asked. He would not chase vindication at the cost of clean. Gloria Ruiz said, "You are not a detective, you are a witness." He breathed, and the heat cooled to fuel. He said, "If the truth comes, it will find me standing." The ground under his second chance shook but held. The apprenticeship briefing filled the union hall with boots, coffee, and weathered pride. Ray Mercer said, "I'm here for the long haul, not the headline." Tyler Knox drifted in with a laugh that drew chairs closer. The coordinator asked for portfolios, and Tyler slid a glossy deck like a magician. Ray opened his binder of clean logs and steady shifts. The room admired shine, even while living on grit. Tyler Knox said, "Results beat rituals, friend." Ray said, "Rituals keep results standing." A welder whispered that the prize slot was won, and speed would decide. The coordinator tested them with a mock plan, and Tyler chose the shortcut that saved minutes and hid risk. Ray marked hazards with patient ink and accepted the slower score. He felt the crowd lean toward thrill. He said, "I will not win fast and lose right." The coordinator nodded without warmth. Tyler shook hands as if the ceremony were already his. Ray tasted iron and kept his page straight. Dana Patel scheduled a compliance review that read like a cross-exam. Dana Patel said, "Consistency is your argument, not charm." Ray Mercer said, "Then the calendar is my witness." She requested 2 months of logs, employer letters, and ride verifications. He felt the weight and refused the sigh rising in his throat. Gloria Ruiz said, "Front-load the truth and there is nothing left to chase." He color-coded the binder until shame had nowhere to hide. Dana Patel said, "Your rival submitted a risk assessment with improved throughput." He said, "I submitted a safe one with improved mornings." She watched for flinch and found none. The meeting stretched like a long plank over cold water. He owned a late clock-in and named the bus number. She wrote it down and did not frown. He said, "If I lose on speed, I still win on clean." Dana Patel closed the file with a quiet click that felt like fairness thinking. He left lighter than he entered. The tempter arrived with a grin and a shortcut wrapped in nostalgia. Dex Harlan said, "I can route your hours through a friendly foreman, no flags, faster stamps." Ray Mercer said, "Friendly today turns expensive tomorrow." Dex laughed like the old days when rules were decorations. Mira Bennett said, "Name what it costs out loud." Ray said, "It costs my daughter's seat staying warm." Dex leaned in and sold relief like candy after a fast. He promised Tyler Knox used the same river, just upstream. Ray said, "Winning dirty stains everyone who claps." Dex called him preacher and offered a final bargain. Gloria Ruiz said on speaker, "Walk away before your mouth forgets your feet." Ray stood and paid for his coffee and Dex a toll to exit clean. Dex Harlan said, "You'll watch him beat you by a week." Ray said, "I'll watch me stay." The door closed on the smell of easy money and old failure. Saturday's game started without the seat Ray promised to fill. He was stuck at port side, covering a late pallet because he had refused a risky stack earlier. Ray Mercer said, "I chose safe, now I pay late." The foreman said, "Policy kept us from an incident, good catch." The praise landed like a fine print blessing. His phone buzzed with a photo of a smiling scoreboard and an empty bleacher spot. Mira Bennett said, "Ava noticed, but she also noticed your hard hat." He closed his eyes and counted breaths until blame quieted. Tyler Knox posted a victory selfie at a volunteer drive, face framed by applause. Ray said, "Let him have the lens." He loaded the last crate and signed the log that memorialized the delay. He sent Ava a voice note that did not explain, only owned. He said, "I will be early next time." The forklift beeped, and the daylight thinned. He walked out with dignity, heavier and steadier. On Monday, the rumor bloomed like mold in damp corners. An anonymous post claimed Ray Mercer fudged logs to curry favor. He read the lie twice and tasted metal. Dana Patel said, "We hold review tomorrow, bring everything." He said, "I will bring the boring truth." Tyler Knox commented with concern that sounded like distance. Mira Bennett said, "Stand still and show your receipts breathing." Gloria Ruiz said, "Fear runs fast. Facts run far." He opened the folder labeled withheld until asked and felt the audit's quiet power. He had not planned to use it, but the ground moved first. He said, "I will not weaponize it, only answer." Night worked its hardest on his resolve, and the old key in the box ticked like a clock he could not see. He printed route maps, time stamps, and a note from the foreman. He said, "If clean costs me applause, I can afford it." The rumor hit a wall named morning. The review room felt like a scale that weighed air and still found numbers. Dana Patel said, "We reopened the old freight variants." Ray Mercer said, "I brought logs and the audit that arrived." Dana slid a ledger copy marked with a date that once burned him. She said, "This shows you flagged the mismatch before the invoice posted." His throat tightened, and then let go. She pointed to a terminal ID tied to a bay he never worked. She said, "That bay belonged to a special projects team." Ray said, "Tyler's bay." The word landed without triumph. Dana said, "A retired dispatcher sent me this after your rumor review." He felt vindication reach for his pride and stopped it at the wrist. She said, "You can file a complaint that will scorch people who still feed their kids here." He said, "I can also ask for repair that leaves the floors safer." The twist did not crown him. It burdened him. He said, "I will choose receipts over revenge." They met in the loading bay where echoes made every word a second opinion. Tyler Knox said, "Careful with that paperwork, it swings like a chain." Ray Mercer said, "The chain hit me first." Tyler leaned on the rail and softened in a way that looked expensive. He said, "I kept you out of cuffs back then by pushing for a quiet exit." Ray felt the floor tilt under an old night. Tyler said, "I did it to save a contract and a scene, not to save you, but you got saved." Ray said, "I paid for that rescue with a label." Tyler nodded like a man paying a bill he still disputes. He said, "We all bend the lines to keep the lights on." Ray said, "Lines bend people." A forklift beeped past like a metronome. Tyler said, "If you file, the splash stains more than me." Ray said, "If I don't, the stain teaches." Respect moved between them without shaking hands. The community center smelled like lemon cleaner and last chances. Gloria Ruiz said, "I will testify to your pattern, but there is a bill." Ray Mercer said, "Name it." She opened a folder that was really a budget. She said, "Portside's foundation pays for half our evening program." The number sat on the page like a bruise. Mira Bennett said, "If telling the truth costs lights here, we will find candles." Gloria Ruiz said, "No martyrdom, just math." Ray felt the twist land on people who would never hear his name. He said, "I won't trade their homework for a headline." Gloria said, "Then ask for a process, not a spectacle." He nodded, because principled anger loves microphones. She said, "We serve by receipts and repair." He said, "I will ask for both." The binder between them looked heavier than steel. The door chimed, and a kid ran past with a book about bridges. At the civic panel, microphones glinted like small knives. Tyler Knox said, "We celebrate perseverance even from those rebuilding reputations." The applause had teeth. Ray Mercer said, "I'm here to learn the new safety protocol." The moderator smiled at Tyler's polish. Tyler added, "Speed and innovation keep us alive." Ray said, "So do checklists." The audience laughed as if at a gentle joke that wasn't. A volunteer asked how to balance pressure and process. Tyler said, "Hire people who perform under heat." Ray said, "Train people so the heat teaches, not burns." A subtle murmur split the room. Tyler clasped Ray's shoulder with a friendly squeeze that registered as a warning. Ray did not pull away. He said, "Standards protect the least loud." The compliment Tyler gave him tasted like a rumor wrapped in velvet. Ray let it fall to the floor and stepped over it. The request he filed read like a dare to his former self. Ray Mercer said, "I am submitting the terminal records and the audit, and I am asking for a restorative review." Dana Patel said, "Define repair." He said, "Correct the logs, fix the bay access, retrain under a public checklist and post the findings." She said, "And your part?" He said, "I own missed seats and late clocks. Assign me community shifts I.O." The air felt cooler after that sentence. Dana Patel said, "This will not make you popular." He said, "Popularity is what broke the rails." She nodded and set a date that would bruise and heal. Mira Bennett said, "You traded applause for a door that stays on its hinges." He breathed like a man laying brick. He said, "Earning this now requires more honesty than comfort." The twist did not end the climb. It sharpened grade and steadied his feet. The restorative hearing packed a small room with big consequences and no music. Ray Mercer said, "I'm here to correct the record and make repair." A union rep shifted like a chair complaining. Tyler Knox said, "Our throughput kept families fed." Dana Patel said, "Today we choose standards or shortcuts." Ray opened his binder and let the silence count first. He said, "I flagged a variance, then lived under it." The foreman confirmed the safe pallet change that cost a game seat. Ray said, "I'll keep paying that kind of loss." Tyler's smile carried a lawyer's weather. He said, "Innovation requires speed." Ray said, "Safety requires receipts." The retired dispatcher's note entered like a quiet witness. Dana Patel said, "We can fix logs and retrain, or we can bury this." Ray breathed and chose the plank with no rail. He said, "Fix it in public and schedule me for community shifts." The room heard a door closing on applause. During a recess, the hallway stretched like a long question nobody wanted. Tyler Knox said, "Withdraw the public piece, and I'll endorse your apprenticeship slot." The offer slid across Tile like a dropped coin. Ray Mercer said, "You want repair without witness." Tyler said, "I want survival without spectacle." Ray felt the short road drum in his ribs. Mira Bennett texted, "I'm in the lobby. Breathe slow and count." He pictured Ava's ribbon and the empty seat with his name. He said, "I will win slower and cleaner." Tyler's eyes cooled a shade. He said, "You'll lose the slot." Ray said, "Slots return, stains linger." Dana Patel appeared like a bell calling class. She said, "Back in 5. Ray looked at the door and chose the wait that lasts longer than noise. He said, "I won't trade the hinge for a headline." Gloria Ruiz met him by the vending machines that swallowed change and patience. Gloria Ruiz said, "If you hold the line, it will cost you hours and friends." Ray Mercer said, "I can budget hours. I will survive the friends." She nodded and trimmed the comfort from her voice. She said, "You must offer amends to the floor, not speeches to the room." He said, "I'll take Saturday safety drills and night checks." She said, "Add a talk to the youth crew about shortcuts and grief." He felt the ask land like a barbell and fit his hands to it. Mira Bennett said, I will cover dinners and rides. He said, thank you. Gloria pointed at the vending glass. She said, pick fuel, not sugar. He chose almonds and a plan that tasted like cardboard in future. She said, costly truce posture. He stood straighter and walked back in. The final segment began with Dana Patel reading the plan like a contract. Dana Patel said, Option A, corrective action public, with retraining and schedule changes. Option B, private memo and quiet edits. The room waited for the old Ray to blink. Ray Mercer said, Option A. Tyler Knox said, he is grandstanding. Ray shook his head like a door refusing a draft. He said, I am surrendering applause to keep the door on. The union rep asked for assurances against scapegoats. Dana Patel said, findings will list systems first, then names. Ray added his own name to the community shifts without flinching. He said, I missed seats and minutes, I owe time. The pen scratched like gravel under a tire. Silence settled, workmanlike and clean. Tyler stared as if recalculating a map with fewer exits. Ray stood inside the cost and did not negotiate. The decision landed like a stamp that echoes in metal. Dana Patel said, corrective action approved, public posting, retraining scheduled, and community shifts assigned. Ray Mercer said, thank you. The thanks carried work, not victory. Tyler Knox accepted the terms with a nod that saved face and burned pride. He said, well, adapt. Ray said, well, be safer. The union rep shook his hand, slow but sincere. He said, you earned a hard reputation. Ray said, I can carry that. Outside, the sky broke into a thin sun that felt earned. Mira Bennett said, you chose the costly truth. He said, I chose the floor over the stage. Gloria Ruiz said, then keep choosing. The notice went up on the board, and no trumpet sounded. Ray breathed in the quiet like oxygen you count, not waste. The ledger shifted. The posting went live at Portside before lunch, and silence did the reading. Ray Mercer said, we fix the rails first, then names. The floor crew studied the checklist like a new map that finally showed rivers. Dana Patel said, retraining starts tonight. Attendance is pay. A few eyes rolled, then settled on the plan like boots on dry rock. The union rep said, we'll watch the watchers and sign off on changes. Ray nodded because oversight is not an insult when you mean it. Tyler Knox kept his posture steady and his jaw quiet. He said, results will match the schedule. Ray said, and the schedule will match the rules. Gloria Ruiz texted, receipts beat rumors, keep logging. He logged. The first bay locked on cue, and a light turned from guest to green. He said, that's one door that closes right. The room did not cheer. It breathed. His shift started on time, and boredom blessed every minute like rain on a field. Ray Mercer said, routine is the repair. The forklift beeped to steady him, and checkboxes filled with unromantic ink. A driver signed the new log without sighs, which felt like applause that grew up. Mira Bennett said, dinner's at 6, nothing fancy. He said, predictable tastes good. The clock slid past quitting time, and no one chased him for an extra hour. He returned a spare helmet and wrote a note about a loose hinge. Small, exact, and real. The office called to confirm Saturday drills, and he said yes before doubt cleared its throat. He passed the old bus stop and did not sprint. He said, I can walk and still win. The sky went gray, and then ordinary blue. He did not need a brighter color. By week's end, the comment board quieted, and the floor got louder in useful ways. A welder said, the lockout works, I kept my hand. Ray Mercer said, good beats fast today. The union rep posted a note calling the checklist non-negotiable. Tyler Knox forwarded a training photo without his face in it. He said, team completed phase 1. Ray let the credit sit with the system and not the names. Dana Patel said, complaint withdrawn, program stays public. The community forum thread that once smoked went still. A neighbor wrote, "Nice to read, nothing on fire." Ray said, "That is my headline." The retired dispatcher mailed a spare badge clip and a handwritten "Keep going." He pinned it, not like a trophy but like a tool that remembers. The rumor had run out of road, and the road kept going. Saturday drills ran long, and Ray called home before the second whistle. Ray Mercer said, "I'll be there by third quarter." Mira Bennett said, "Drive safe, Ava saved your seat." He reached the gym with the clock unkind but not cruel. Ava waved from the bleachers, and the old ache rose, then changed shape. He said, "I'm here." He watched her cheer another kid's shot, and did not make the moment about absence. At halftime he handed her a crumpled ribbon he kept from years ago. He said, "I didn't earn when you did, but I'm earning now." She nodded the way kids nod when they test a bridge and feel it hold. Mira Bennett said, "Consistency is contagious." He laughed and wrote the next week's rides on a sticky note. Small paper, heavy promise. The buzzer sounded, and they walked out together without ceremony. Back home, the cabinet door opened with a soft click that felt earned, not dramatic. Ray Mercer said, "Time to move the letter." He took it down and slid it into the binder where the daily logs live. He said, "Exoneration belongs with effort." The old key in the wooden box stayed, not as a trophy but as a boundary. Mira Bennett said, "We keep it to remember which doors we don't unlock." He taped the new schedule inside the cabinet where coffee begins. He said, "Start here, not there." The apartment felt larger without changing size. The phone buzzed with the next community shift, and he accepted before relief could bargain. He said, "I will be the boring man who shows up." Outside, a siren ran somewhere else. Inside, the quiet warmed and held. Morning found the apartment smelling like coffee and wet coats by the door. Ray Mercer said, "Today they announced the slot." His voice held no tremor, only breath measured to fit the day. Mira Bennett said, "Whatever name they call, our plan doesn't move." He nodded because promises should not hinge on applause. He checked the binder, then the cabinet schedule, then the quiet. He said, "I wanted it like a key in my palm." She said, "You wanted to stand more." He smiled at the blunt mercy in that math. A bus hissed outside like a tired animal choosing to keep going. He texted Ava a picture of his lunch and a corny joke. She sent back a sticker that said "almost there." He said, "If I win, I report early. If I lose, I report early." Mira touched the wooden box with the old key. She said, "We keep the boundary either way." He breathed and felt the breath stay. He said, "I am not a headline, I am a shift." The kettle clicked off like a small amen. At portside, a woman from claims waited by the board with folded papers. "Mende Dao scrying." Marisol Vega said, "Your safe pallet shift prevented my injury from repeating." Ray Mercer said, "I carried the rumor that I caused the mess." She shook her head and pointed to a revised log. She said, "I was hurt last year when the bay was loose. Your complaint locked it." The words found a room in him that had stayed dark. He said, "I am sorry for when my name was smoke." Marisol Vega said, "Repair beats sorry. Keep it public." He nodded and felt pride, trying on humility like a clean jacket. Tyler Knox passed and paused at the edge of the circle. He said, "Good outcomes matter more than who signs the paper." Ray said, "Outcomes need witnesses." Marisol lifted a small brace from her bag. She said, "This is retired now." He watched the brace settle into her purse like a finished chapter. He said, "Thank you for telling me." She said, "Earn it again tomorrow." The announcement pinged phones like a flock turning at once. The slot went to Tyler Knox, printed in tidy type that loved winners. Ray Mercer said, "He earned the room he chose." The old ache knocked and then waited. Ava Mercer said on speaker, "Did they call your name?" He said, "They called his." Silence held for a breath that did not break anything. Ava Mercer said, Are you still coming to practice runs? He said. I'll be early, she said. Then we're good. He felt something unclench that applause could never untie. Mira Bennett said, You stood clean in public. That grows private roots. He pictured the bay light, turning green and staying green. He said, I lost the prize and kept the floor. A forklift beeped in a patient rhythm, as if counting with him. He sent Tyler a short note that wished him safety and receipts. The send felt like sanding a rough edge smooth. That evening, the Union Hall filled for the retraining kickoff and a little judgment. Mr. Whitaker said, I have seen men outrun rules and trip over ghosts. Ray Mercer said, I plan to walk. The elder studied him like a ledger written by rain and dried by work. Mr. Whitaker said, The slot is a picture in the paper. The checklist is a roof. Ray said, I am roofing. A few old hands nodded because roofs had saved their dinners. Mr. Whitaker said, The boy with the trophy will be fine if he respects the roof. Ray said, He will have witnesses. The elder looked at the posted plan and signed his name under it. He said, We remember who closed the bay. The room exhaled without applause. Ray felt the weight shift from his shoulders into the building itself. He said, I'll carry my share. Mr. Whitaker said, Then carry quietly and long. Night drew its line through the apartment and left the kitchen lamp to hold it. Ray Mercer said, He won the prize I wanted. Mira Bennett said, And you kept the thing that keeps waking you up, right? He opened the wooden box and looked at the old key like a retired danger. He said, This doesn't fit any door I need. He closed the lid and set it back like a boundary that would not wander. The cabinet schedule rustled when the heater kicked on. He said, Tomorrow is drills and a ride for Ava. Mira Bennett said, I like that sentence. He smiled and taped a fresh, sticky note that read early, honest, home. He said, I will not trade clean for shine. The window showed his reflection carrying no trophies and standing taller. He breathed and let the breath finish its work. The day shut like a good latch. He said, Victory is standing clean.